Today we're going to talk about the 10 things to consider when withdrawing money from your retirement assets. This is a very, very important topic today, so I'm glad you're tuning in to see this. It really takes a well-designed plan in order to determine how you should withdraw assets once you reach retirement age. There's so many things to consider. We're going to take a deep dive in that today. Welcome to Money in Motion. My name is Walt West, founder and CEO of West Advisory Group. And we're here to teach you how to prevent money falling through the cracks. And remember, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. The first consideration for determining how you take money from your retirement assets is your withdrawal rate. Your withdrawal rate is the percentage in which that you're going to take from your assets to support the income in which you desire. You might have heard the adage, the 4% rule. The 4% rule has been built on a lot of data, a lot of facts over a bunch of years. And the purpose of the 4% rule is to say, hey, if you simply take 4% out, your money should last for at least 30 years. That's the idea behind the 4% rule. But there's other things to consider when you determine that distribution rate. Market conditions, market volatility all has an impact on that 4% rule. You might find yourself, when you take 4%, that the market isn't doing so well. If your investments are market sensitive, you might have to take a little bit less. If the market's doing really well, you could take a little bit more. So it's an average 4% in any one given year. So that's the first thing you really need to consider is that withdrawal rate. The second consideration is prioritizing your tax-advantaged accounts. There's three places you can house your money: in a taxable bucket, a tax-deferred bucket, and a tax-free bucket. By definition, a taxable bucket is one of which that you pay taxes on that bucket each and every year. The tax-deferred bucket is the bucket in which you were able to get a tax deduction when you made the contribution, and that all money coming out of the bucket would be taxable upon distribution. And then the tax-free bucket is the one in which you put money in after tax, it grows tax-free, and all distributions are tax-free. So you have to make the determination of how you take that money from each of those buckets. There was a time in history where they talked about you should take your money from the taxable bucket first, then the tax-deferred bucket, and leave the tax-free bucket for the later part in life. Well, that has changed over time. Tax rates continue to change. It doesn't stay still, right? There's many different things that are happening in the tax code, and it does change from time to time. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. You really have to take the stance to evaluate how you should distribute the money on an annual basis. Oftentimes, you might find that part of your income comes from the taxable bucket and the tax-deferred bucket, but ultimately you do want to leave the tax-free bucket to later in life if you can. So there's many things you need to consider when taking this distribution from these various buckets. So make sure you spend time working on that before you start your distributions. So the third consideration is required minimum distributions. Now, for those of you watching the video that have money in that tax-deferred bucket, as I just explained, you are going to be required to take a distribution once you reach age 73. And depending on the age and the year in which that you were born, you may actually be able to delay that to age 75. But nevertheless, you are going to have to take distributions once you reach those ages. And that is a requirement. And that requirement is something that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life once you reach that age. And it is a moving target. The older you get, the more you have to take by percentage. So this is something you need to consider early on in the distribution phase, because the idea being is that if you delay taking money from the tax-deferred bucket till later in life, you might find yourself having to take out more money than needed to support your income, which could potentially have an enhanced tax liability. So think through that decision and understand what your potential required minimum distributions might look like by using some average rate of return on the performance of those investments. But a very important consideration. The fourth consideration is Social Security timing. This is a question that we're often asked. When should I start my Social Security? Now you can start your Social Security as early as age 62, and you can delay it all the way to age 70. There is this sweet spot, if you will. It's called your full retirement age. For most people, it's between 66 or 67. So you have this opportunity to start early or delay it till later in life. So you understand, if you delay from 62 to your full retirement age, it's typically a 6% increase per year in benefit. If you delay it from your full retirement age to age 70, it's about an 8% per year increase in benefit. So you really need to consider when you should start your Social Security. Many people think a bird in the hand's better than two in the bush. What I mean by that, starting it earlier, they're going to get all they can get. I'm not sure that's the right answer. You need to consider all the other areas as far as other income that you may have from other sources before making that final decision. But this decision on Social Security timing is a very important piece when determining your withdrawal from your retirement assets. The fifth consideration is the bucket strategy. The bucket strategy is where you arrange your investments in a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term perspective. The short-term bucket is typically a bucket that holds cash, that 1 to 2 years needs of cash, and you get typically some dividends on there, but it's there for liquidity purposes and to be able to support the income in which you need immediately. The midterm bucket is that 1 to 5 year bucket. It's that bucket that typically holds more dividend type of investments that pay dividends that are ultimately there to support your short-term bucket over time. The long-term bucket is that 5+ year bucket. Its goal, its job is really to provide growth in the overall investment portfolio to help grow the investment to outpace inflation and to protect from longevity risk. And this idea behind this bucket strategy puts you in the position where you can have consistent income from your investments to help support your overall income need. The sixth thing to consider is tax efficiency. Taxes is a big part of the planning process, especially in the distribution phase. Again, as I say all the time, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. The idea behind tax efficiency is to ensure that you're taking money from your investments to create the lowest amount of taxes. But remember, you have to take all income sources into consideration because they will be affected by how you take distributions from your investments. So you should really look at this. In fact, this is a decision that you should think through each and every year. So the tax efficiency strategy is based on what your previous tax liability was and might be for the upcoming year. So think through how you should derive your investment decisions based on tax efficiency. The seventh thing to consider is your spending strategy. There's two types of income, your needs and your wants. You really need to think through how much money do you really need, and that's the money you need each and every month to support utilities, your insurances, your taxes. This is something you have to have come in and month out. Your wants or your discretionary income is the money that you typically derive that's doing all the fun stuff, the things that you like to do, the travel, spending time with grandchildren, playing golf, whatever it is that's on your bucket list is your discretionary money. You need to think through those two calculations, your needs and your wants. You might think from your needs side, you might use your more reliable income sources to support that. Things like Social Security, your pensions, annuity distributions. You know that money is going to show up each and every month. We often call that mailbox money. The discretionary money or your wants money is really something that might be derived more from your investments. It's less guaranteed. It's more subject to market volatility, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility on how you derive those distributions. Oftentimes, discretionary spending is not consistent opposed to what you have on your needs side, right? So think through that before making that decision. The eighth consideration is sequence of returns. Sequence returns happens when you're taking distribution from your investment portfolio. So if we would happen to have a downturn in the market and you're taking distribution simultaneously, this could really have a negative impact on the value of your account going forward. It might make it challenging to recoup that money over time because of the distributions you've made previously. So it's always prudent to take 1 to 2 years of income needs and put it in a bucket in which is more short-term to help protect from sequence of returns. So the 9th consideration is annuities. For those of you watching this video that are not interested in market risk and you want to make sure that your income is more consistent, something you don't have to worry about, and you want to make sure that it just shows up each and every month, doesn't matter what the market is doing. Annuities might be something to consider. Annuities tend to be more consistent, they give you guarantees, and they're more predictable from an income perspective. One thing to consider when you start withdrawing money from your investments, annuities might be a good fit for you. The 10th and final thing to consider is review and adjust, which is probably the most important step in everything that we talked about here today. You must review your decisions, you must review your income strategy at least a couple times a year to make sure everything is in good order. I highly stress that you do this. It's not a set it and forget it proposition, folks. It's something you need to kind of watch over time because things will change. Thanks for tuning in to another Money in Motion. If you like this video, please click the like and subscribe below. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, see you then.